One sleepy night, I was about to hit the hay when a thought struck me. What if, now hear me out, I tried reading yaoi? Now, being a bit of a fan of yuri myself, I thought that I might as well check out the opposite end of the spectrum. I'm no stranger to characters of the same sex developing a romantic interest in one another, but I did have a feeling that I might feel a little bit uncomfortable, and that definitely held true as I read through the story. Okay, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. Anyway, in my slightly sleep-deprived state, I decided to click on the first thing that did not have the most generic shoujo art style ever, completely disregarding the descriptions, the titles, and... what the fuck? And that indeed, as in the very first panel, I see the words "fwop fwop fwop," as I slowly realize what kind of story I had just walked into. I knew yaoi would make me uncomfortable with all the male-on-male interaction, but holy did I not expect this to be my first impression of boys love. So just like any normal, sane human being, I closed the tab, cleared my browsing history, put down my phone, and went to sleep. But you see, I'm not normal or sane, so I decided that I would return with a screen recorder and a new video idea. I hate myself. So the story starts off with one hell of a freaking hook. Then we cut back to a time before that one hell of a freaking hook to introduce us to this guy, Tongmin Lin. He is currently working in what appears to be a convenience store. A group of girls was flirting on him, but he didn't budge, even doing the responsible thing and telling them off for fooling around instead of studying. Boy, am I sure that won't have any future implications on the story. He sees a stain on one of the girl's sleeves and can't stand the sight of it, wiping it off without a second's thought. But he only does this because, as his inner monologue states, he's the type of person who, upon seeing something displeasing and out of place, cannot help but fix it. And then this guy, who we learn in later chapters is named Zen Kai-yu, enters the store being a bit of an a-hole. Boy, am I sure that won't have any. He demands an order that is not available and so instead asks for an iced hot latte. Just in case you didn't catch it the first time, I'll say it again. He asked for an iced hot latte. At the same time, Kai's motorcycle was blocking the way of a truck. Basically, everything about him ticks off Tongmin, so he scolds him for it. They get into a bit of an argument when a girl calls out to Kai, prompting for him to leave, and just before he does, he tells Tongmin that when he returns, he better have his order ready. All pretty mediocre for a first chapter, nothing really special, so time to move on. So yeah, the second chapter also has one hell of a freaking start. Anyway, to skip any more unnecessary details, Tongmin finds that he seems to have a roommate who is not there at that time of the day and he doesn't know who it is. He goes out handing deliveries but encounters Kai again on the road. They argue and eventually go their separate ways. But for his last delivery, he finds the address to be oddly familiar. And wouldn't you know it, it's his place! And who could have guessed that the one person who would answer the door would be Kai Zhenyu. Naked, without clothes. Which can only mean one thing. They are roommates. Frustrated, Tongmin asks his landlord if he can cancel his lease. But he can't. He can leave, but he'd still be required to pay rent. So being the only reasonable option that he has, he chooses to stay. I'm pretty sure the general concept is clear enough now. We have Mr. Control Freak and Mr. I'm a prance around with my cock and balls out for the neighborhood to see living under the same roof. So my dear viewers, I ask you, what do you think follows in a logical progression? A. Mr. Control Freak takes control. B. Mr. I'm a prance around with my cock and balls out for the neighborhood to see loses 2 organs in his testicular region. Or C. Chapter 1. I'll give you 3 seconds. The answer is A. Mr. Control Freak takes control of Kai's dick. So you see, frustrated that Kai just does as he pleases, even going as far as yanking while Tongmin is in the same room, he literally says that he is prohibited from rubbing one out without his permission and proceeds to help him in order to make him run dry. And what proceeds in this chapter and the ones to follow is a whole lot of male-on-male action as Tongmin, the control freak, slowly seems to lose control whenever he is with Kai. Anyway, this is as far as I want to take the discussion of the plot. I only really read up to the 34th or so chapter of what is currently 90 chapters and still ongoing. To sum up my thoughts on this as a story, it's pretty standard, probably even below average, as to be expected from glorified jack-off material such as this. But I personally don't like it that much, especially at the start of the story with Tongmin's controlling tendencies, as it can come off as too much and too rough. I mean, it's not even just annoying. He commits what is essentially sexual assault when he unconsensually helps Kai. Also, because the male-on-male action causes a bit of discomfort on my end. However, throughout my reading experience, there was one chapter in particular that stood out to me. Chapter 17. It was in this chapter that I found this panel, and to be honest, it was pretty nice. It was not only refreshing after everything that I had just gone through, it was exactly what I was looking for. A proper love story. And to me, this was a step in the right direction. But as expected, the next 17 chapters I read were just filled with naked men getting railed. Again, as of making this video, there are currently 90 chapters of this madness available for you to read, which means I've basically only read a third of the current story. After all this, all I can really say is it's not for me. It's clearly marketed towards the horny demographic that just wants to see men railing each other, and I'm not part of it, because I'm part of the demographic that just wants to see women screaming. All jokes aside, I personally enjoy wholesome romance comedies, and not a bunch of this. I tried to check another BL story and it wasn't really like this. It was a lot more tame, but I could tell from the themes the artwork seemed to have that it seemed to have a bit of a hot male kind of erotic aura, telling me that the yaoi fandom must be absolutely dehydrated. Also, one more thing. The various ways that the artists were censoring everything was just pretty bizarre, to say the least. You could tell that they were having a blast with this. Another thing, I do think that the idea of the control freak losing control sounds a bit interesting, but it didn't have to be done this way. Finally, I think it's about time I compare yaoi and yuri, as these are basically the gender swap versions of one another and the only reason why I tried reading this story in the first place. At its core, I find yuri to focus more on being cute. Whether it be the characters, the story, or anything for that matter, I find it to be cute. Meanwhile, yaoi seems to be a little more hot. Not necessarily in a sexual sense. These characters have that looking cool kind of face and expression 24/7. Both seem to have their fair share of erotica. Not that I'd know. I mean, there's no avoiding that, but I feel that yaoi is probably hornier. Just maybe. And both, compared to a normal love story, are just the same. And so, at the end of the day, do I think I would ever get into reading BL? No. Maybe? I guess I would if the story is actually entertaining. So, boys and girls, what did we learn from this video? Don't be like me. Just don't. Anyway, I probably had too much fun writing the script and this is the end of the video. I have no idea how to properly end this, so this has been Red, signing off. Thanks for watching. Bye. I hate myself. God, it's hot. I'm gonna turn this stupid fan on.